Hey guys, Jim here with another video for you. This is 50 Years in Film, 2013. But before we begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe, but most importantly, leave those comments below. Let me know how you feel about the films in this series, and if you have any recommendations for me. Now, as we usually do, we're going to start off with the normal caveat. This is not a countdown of the films from that year, far from it. It's not all of them. It's just the films that I include in my collection. And also, again, this isn't a ranking video of any kind. It is simply just a recap of some of the films that came out in that particular year. And we've got a lot from this year. This year, I actually have 42 titles. So we're going to jam through this one a lot quicker than we normally do, because if we don't, we're going to be here all day. So we're just going to go ahead and start like we always do. We're going to jump around in genre. We're going to start off with animation. And the first one is The Croods, starring the voices of Nicolas Cage and Emma Stone, among others, and Ryan Reynolds. Cute movie. Then we've got Disney's Frozen. This, of course, was a huge hit, and rightfully so. It's a very good movie. And the final animated film that I have from that year, Despicable Me 2, starring the voice of Steve Carell, of course, reprising his role as Gru, and including Kristen Wiig and those adorable minions again. Good movie. Now we're going to switch over to comedy. The first comedy on the list, Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa, starring Johnny Knoxville. This is the only Jackass property that I own. This movie is juvenile, it's disgusting, it's politically incorrect, it's offensive, it is absolutely hysterically funny. Then we've got Spring Breakers, directed by Harmony Korine and starring James Franco, Vanessa Hudgens. Yeah, I don't like this movie. I saw it once, got it in the dollar bin, you know, as a blind buy. Watched it once years ago. Don't remember much about it other than the fact that I didn't like it. But I don't like this one even. I like this one even less. The Hangover Part 3, directed by Todd Phillips and starring the usual Bradley Cooper, Zach Galifianakis, and Ed Helms. Also with John Goodman in this one. The main complaint people had about Hangover Part 2 was that it was more or less the same exact movie as the first one. So Todd Phillips took that to heart and decided to make the third one completely different. Big mistake. This movie sucks. Then we've got Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues, starring Will Ferrell, Paul Rudd, Steve Carell, and David Koechner. Directed by Adam McKay. The sequel to Anchorman, of course. Funny movie, not nearly as good as the first one. Then we've got, from the Cornetto trilogy, The World's End. Directed by, excuse me, I got something in my throat here. Excuse me. Directed by the incredible Edgar Wright and starring Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Martin Freeman. Great cast. Pierce Brosnan shows up in this movie. This was the concluding chapter of the Cornetto trilogy. A lot of people don't like this movie as much as the first two. I love all three of these movies very much. I think The World's End is a very, very underrated film. Then we've got probably the craziest comedy from that year. This Is the End, starring Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, James Franco, Jay Baruchel, Danny McBride. This movie is absolutely hysterical. Directed by Seth Rogen and Evan Greenberg. Everybody and their brother pops up in this movie at the beginning of it, and it's one of the funniest things ever. This movie, again, very, very offensive, juvenile, disgusting, Absolutely hilarious. And then we've got The Wolf of Wall Street, directed by Martin Scorsese and starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Jonah Hill, and introducing Margot Robbie. And boy, did she make an impression in this movie. I love this movie to death. I think it is absolutely hysterical. I think it's one of Martin Scorsese's best movies. I think it is one of DiCaprio's best performances, and I think it is definitely Jonah Hill's best performance. I love this movie so much. Now we're switching in slowly into drama with American Hustle. Directed by David O. Russell and with an all-star cast of Christian Bale, Bradley Cooper, Jeremy Renner, Amy Adams, and in her Academy Award-winning role, or no, I'm sorry, I take that back. Jennifer Lawrence won for Silver Linings Playbook the year prior. She was nominated for this movie. Based on a true story, great movie filled with great performances. Now we're definitely into drama. We're going with a couple of biographies. The first one, Captain Phillips. This isn't so much a biography as a true story, of course. Directed by Paul Greengrass and starring Tom Hanks and Bakhad Abdi, who is the main kidnapper. Made quite an impression in this movie. Very good movie, very intense. Tom Hanks gives a really great performance as usual. Solid film all the way around. Then we have Lovelace, starring Amanda Seyfried, Peter Skarsgård, Hank Azaria, Juno Temple, all-star cast. This is a biography of Linda Lovelace, who notoriously starred in the film Deep Throat back in the day. And again, I don't remember much about this movie. I do remember that I enjoyed it at the time. I remember that she gives a very good performance in this film. And the next biography we have is Rush. And no, it is not based on the rock band. It is based on two race car drivers. Directed by Ron Howard. And starring Chris Hemsworth, Daniel Bruhl, and Olivia Wilde. Yeah, Thor and Zemo are both in this movie. Real good movie. I didn't know anything about either of these gentlemen before I saw this movie. I don't know how accurate this movie is. Don't care. Real good movie. This one isn't a very good movie. Now we're going into action and suspense. And we have Spike Lee's remake of the classic film Old Boy. Starring Josh Brolin, Elizabeth Olsen, and Sharlto Copley. Yeah, Thanos and Wanda are in this one. If I never saw the original Old Boy, chances are I would like this movie a lot more than I do. However, that movie is damn near a perfect masterpiece, and there's no reason for this movie to ever exist. So if you're going to watch one, watch the original. Don't waste your time with this one. Again, this isn't a horrible movie. I should stress that, okay? This is not a horrible movie. It's just a horrible remake. Then we have Grand Piano, starring Elijah Wood and John Cusack. Directed by, who directed this one? Eugenio Mara, somebody I'm not familiar with. This is a suspense thriller along the lines of Phone Booth, and this would actually make a really good double feature with Phone Booth. This is basically a two-man show, and both of them give really good performances in this movie. Sorry about the noise, the lawnmower's going by. Here's a under-the-radar film from that year. Cheap Thrills, starring Pat Healy, Sarah Paxton, and Ethan Embry and David Koechner. Directed by E.L. Katz. This movie's crazy. A lot of people have never heard of this movie. Do yourself a favor, check into this flick. It starts off very unassuming, and by the end of the movie, oh my God, it is so intense. I love this movie. I'm going to cover this one on one of my underrated films to check out very soon. Then we've probably got the most underrated Danny Boyle movie in his filmography, Trance, starring Danny Boyle, Vincent Cassel, and the beautiful Rosario Dawson. Again, this is a suspense thriller. It's got some dark comedy involved, and the performances are great across the board. I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's a little slow, but once it gets going, great movie. Now we're moving into action. And from my Die Hard collection, for the final time, the 5th installment, A Good Day to Die Hard, directed by John Moore and starring Bruce Willis and Jai Courtney. Without a doubt, the worst in the Die Hard franchise. I have seen this movie twice. I will never watch it again. It is a piece of shit. Then we've got Olympus Has Fallen, starring Gerard Butler, Aaron Eckhart, Morgan Freeman, and Melissa Leo, directed by Antoine Fuqua. This movie came out the same year as White House Down, which is a very similar plot. That one's from Roland Emmerich, starring Jamie Foxx. I do not own that movie. I own this one, obviously, because this movie kicks ass. I think this is one of Gerard Butler's best movies. Again, dumb as a stump, but this movie is so much fun, and yeah, Olympus Has Fallen is great. And then we've got Machete Kills from Robert Rodriguez, starring Danny Trejo, Michelle Rodriguez, and Mel Gibson, with a special appearance by Carlos Estevez, aka Charlie Sheen. This is the follow-up to Machete, of course. Absolutely ridiculous in every way. It's not nearly as good as the original, but it's still a lot of fun. I really like Machete Kills. And the last film from the action that we've got right here, drama, is Lone Survivor, directed by Peter Berg and starring Mark Wahlberg, Taylor Kitsch, and Ben Foster. Great movie. Very intense, based on a true story. Very good movie. Now we're switching over to the superhero and graphic novel genre. The first one on the list, Thor, The Dark World. This was the sequel to the original Thor, of course. And this one stars Chris Hemsworth, Natalie Portman, Stellan Skarsgård, Tom Hiddleston, and this one is directed by Andy Taylor. Not a very good movie. It's gotten a little bit better through the years as far as I'm concerned. Originally, most people considered this the weakest of the MCU movies compared to what's come out in the last couple of years. This movie's like the Avengers. But again, it's not my favorite Thor movie, but it's definitely not my least favorite. And then we have Man of Steel, starring Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Michael Shannon, Kevin Costner, and Diane Lane. Directed by Zack Snyder. This was Zack Snyder's entry into the DC world, and this movie was a ginormous hit, and they basically gave him free rein to do an extended universe starting off from this film. Out of all of Zack Snyder's DC material, this one's probably my favorite. It's not my favorite Superman movie, of course. Nothing will compare to the first two Superman movies, in my opinion. But I do prefer this one to everything that came after Superman 2. And Henry Cavill is very good as Superman. And then we've got Iron Man 3, directed by Shane Black, and starring Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Don Cheadle, Ben Kingsley, and Guy Pearce. A lot of people don't like this movie. They think that it's the worst of the 3 Iron Man movies. I think this movie is much better than Iron Man 2. I don't like it as much as the original, but I do like it more than Iron Man 2. And the last superhero movie we have for my X-Men collection, and more specifically the Wolverine offshoot movies, The Wolverine, starring Hugh Jackman and directed by James Mangold. Much, much better than the Origins movie. Not as good as Logan. And then we have Kick-Ass 2, starring Chloe Glory Moretz, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and Jim Carrey in this one, taking over basically for the Nicolas Cage role. I don't like this movie as much as the first one, but I still do really enjoy it. Okay, and then the last graphic novel movie that we have, Two Guns, starring Denzel Washington, Mark Wahlberg, and directed by Baltazar Kumakar. Yeah, spit that one out 5 times in a row. Never heard of him. Good movie, solid movie. Nothing classic or about it or anything, but you can spend 2 hours much worse than watching this movie. Okay, now we're switching gears. We're going over to my Hobbit collection with the second installment, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, directed by Peter Jackson, starring the same cast from the original, but introducing Benedict Cumberbatch as the voice of Smaug. And Luke Evans is also in this as, I forget the name of his character, the Bard or whatever the hell he's called. I don't care. I said in the original Hobbit video from last year, love the Lord of the Rings movies, don't really care for the Hobbit movies. You could take an hour from each one of these movies, put them together, and it would have made a really good movie. Then we have the second installment of the Hunger Games saga, Catching Fire, starring Jennifer Lawrence, Woody Harrelson, Donald Sutherland, the whole cast. This time directed by Francis Lawrence. As I said in the previous video, I saw the original Hunger Games movie. I've seen bits and pieces of the other ones, but I haven't seen any of the other ones, so I really have no opinion of this movie. Then we're going into science fiction now. For my Star Trek reboot Kelvin timeline trilogy, the second installment, Star Trek Into Darkness, starring Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, and Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan. A lot of people were up in arms about this film because they thought it was going to be a remake of The Wrath of Khan. In a way it is, but they kind of changed things around a little bit, and people were very upset about it at the time. I wasn't, because again, this is a reboot. It's not canon, okay? So things that happened in the first movie never happened in the original series, so therefore, why should this? And I don't like it as much as the original film, but I do like it. I don't think it's a horrible movie at all. Then we go to Riddick, which is the third installment of the Riddick saga, starring Vin Diesel and Katie Sackhoff, directed by David Twohy. This one, after the failure of the second movie, which was a bloated science fiction wannabe epic, they went back to the basics of Pitch Black. And this is more or less kind of a remake of Pitch Black, but this movie's a lot of fun. The first half of it reminds me of I Am Legend, because it's literally just him and a dog. I really like Riddick. I thought it was a really good return to form after the second movie, even though I do enjoy the second movie. Then we've got Elysium, starring Matt Damon, Jodie Foster in the worst performance of her career. I mean, I love Jodie Foster. She's terrible in this movie. William Fincher and Sharlto Copley, written and directed by Neil Blomkamp, who this is his follow-up to District 9, which District 9 is a masterpiece. This movie is not. A lot of people do not like this movie. They shit all over it. And again, District 9 is a hard act to follow. I like Elysium. I don't love it, but I do like it. Then we've got Pacific Rim, starring Charlie Hunnam and Idris Elba, directed by Guillermo del Toro. This was probably the most anticipated movie for me that year. I was really looking forward to seeing this. The whole idea of, giant robots versus kaiju, I was there. And I was disappointed. I like this movie. I do like it. I certainly don't love it. But it is a hell of a lot better than the sequel. Then we've got Ender's Game, starring Asa Butterfield, Haley Stanfield, Abigail Breslin, and Harrison Ford. Based on a series of best-selling novels, which I have never read, but my ex-roommate did and loves those books, and he did not like this movie. I did, because again, I never read the books, but he said that it was very, very underwhelming compared to the novels, so I'll take his word for it. And the last science fiction film that we have, Gravity, starring Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, directed by Alfonso Cuarón. I did not see this theatrically, and part of me wishes I would have, but part of me is kind of glad I didn't, because just watching this movie on my big screen TV, I felt vertigo. And I can only imagine what this would have been like in IMAX. But it's a solid film. Sandra Bullock, it's basically a one-person show, and she carries the load quite well. Really like Gravity. Okay, now we're switching over to horror. We're starting off with a documentary. Crystal Lake Memories, the complete history of Friday the 13th. This is an 8-hour documentary that covers every facet of every Friday the 13th film through the remake. And it's incredible. This is not boring at all. If you're into Friday the 13th, I cannot stress enough how good this documentary is. It will answer any question you ever could have possibly had about the making of these films. And then we switch over to Evil Dead. The remake, the reboot, whatever you want to call it. I think it's more of a reboot than a remake. This one stars Jane Levy and directed by Fede Alvarez. I really like this movie. I didn't think I would. Quite honestly, I've gone on record. I don't like remakes, by and large. And this movie's bloody as hell, man. I mean, it's pretty damn gnarly. And yeah, I gotta admit, this movie won me over. The first time I saw it, I didn't really care for it that much. But upon repeated viewings, yeah, I really do like Evil Dead. Then we have The Purge, starring Ethan Hawke and Lena Headey, directed by James DeMonaco. This is the one that started it. This has been, 5 movies now and a TV series, and this isn't my favorite in the series. However, I do like it, and it is a nice little spin on the whole home invasion genre. And I love the hook of the movie. How can you not? One day a year, all crime is legal, and all hell breaks loose once a year. And yeah, I don't know exactly how that helps the economy and everything else, but I gotta admit, it intrigued me as a hook. And again, I like The Purge. I don't love it, but I do like it. But I do love this one. Oh my God, do I love this one. No One Lives, starring Luke Evans and directed by my buddy Rui Kitamura, who directed Versus and Midnight Meat Train. This movie is balls out. It is so good. It's a throwback to the old slasher movies, and it is bloody as hell. I love this movie. Luke Evans is fantastic in this movie. He is so goddamn good. I cannot stress enough how entertaining this movie is. If you like horror movies and you like blood and guts, this is the movie for you. And then we have You're Next, directed by Adam Wingard and starring, what the hell is her name? Sharni Wilson. There she is. Oh my God, she's a rock star. This again, it's a throwback to the slasher movies from the 70s and early 80s. And again, a lot of fun. This movie is a lot of fun. And Sharni Wilson is one of the best final girls ever. If you've never seen You're Next, check it out. Very, very entertaining movie. But I saved this one for last. The Conjuring. Directed by James Wan and starring Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga, Lily Taylor, and Ron Livingston. This movie was a huge hit, and of course it has spawned not only sequels, but offshoots, a la the Annabelle movies. To me, The Conjuring, the original one, is the best out of all of them, out of everything in that series. This movie is a slow burn. It is not gory, but my God, is it frightening. It's a really solid film. It kind of reminds me of a better version of the Amityville Horror. Just about everybody has seen this film. If you haven't, what are you doing? Go out and watch The Conjuring right away. It's a great film. And that's the end of 2013. I'm sorry this one ran almost a half hour long, but again, 40 odd movies. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'll stop babbling. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, possible subscribe, and most importantly, leave those comments. So hope to see you on the next one, everybody. Have a great day, night, whatever time it is. Have a great one.